Welcome to Power Charting. My name is Bruce Fraser, and with me today is none other than the professor, Roman Bogomazov. Roman, welcome.
Thank you, and good to be here.
We are in the Power Charting zone today, and we have a great session. We have some very interesting white coffee and charts to analyze and study in the few minutes that we have together. The time always goes so fast, Roman. So I'm going to do a much better job at keeping track of things today. So let's get going.
All right.
So what we're doing is a pretty straightforward look at scooters, and we're going to first study using the scooter rankings. We're going to study three stocks from the large cap top up list, which is on the homepage, the members homepage. And you can see here that this list of stocks are best up scooter changes. And so they've had a big jump, and we would like to see the characteristics of these best up stocks. And so we'll look at three of those. And then we're going to do effectively the opposite, which is we're going to look at large cap scooters top down. So these are three stocks that have had a sharp break in their scooter rank. And you can see that there's all red negative numbers there. And we've selected three to study today. So Roman, let's just jump right in.
Yeah, a couple of thoughts here, Bruce.
Sure.
First of all, guys, just let's think really quickly, why would the scooter change so drastically? And obviously we are doing the filter, for just that particular day. And where structurally could we find those stocks that are jumping so much in scooter up and down? So probably on some kind of momentum movement. And that momentum move could be within the structure of the trading range. That's number one. Secondly, it could be in the structure of the uptrend or downtrend. That's number two. And then also another idea here that you could see right away from this screen, there are quite a lot of stocks here that change their scooter ranking that are technology stocks. And then the ones that went up in the scooters ranking, some of them are related to energy. So we kind of could see a current rotation that is happening in the markets, and you could see this from the ranking, from the scooters.
And so these are pretty high scooter numbers, especially on the negative. And so they've come from a very high scooter rank down into the mid-level or lower. And then, of course, in the top up, they're jumping into the top half of the scooter ranks and working their way towards the high end of the scooter ranking system.
Actually, let me give you another idea here. We usually are so attracted to actually quite a lot of the ranking indicators, to the top or to the bottom portion of those, ranking lists. And I think actually the rotation itself is much more important, because the rotation actually shows how the institutional money moves, either in or out. So I think, Bruce, this particular scooters filter where we have this approach of measuring the change of the scooter for a specific period is much more helpful to us. I just would wish that we would have maybe on the homepage something not just for one day, but maybe like in the last, 3 months. How did the scooter changed?
Well, and then also in our Wyckoff market discussion yesterday, we had talked about being at the end of the quarter, and the one thing to expect at the end of quarters, and maybe particularly this one, is that we're getting evidence of rotation. And so we could see the rotation developing, especially in these two really small lists. Anecdotally, we can see the rotation potentially occurring as we see, say, energy improving, and we see technology being knocked down. And that could be partly the effect of being at the end of the quarter, and having institutions sort of change the structure of their portfolios.
Well, really quickly, and because we have 25 minutes and we're so good with time, uh, uh, really
Yeah.
quickly, tell me, you mentioned Wyckoff market discussion. What's the difference between power charting in your view and Wyckoff market discussion?
Well, we do this every Wednesday, Wyckoff market discussion, 3 o'clock Pacific time, is that we have a very in-depth conversation, discussion about the markets. We look at sectors, we look at commodities, and so on. And so we're looking at a vast list of different markets and how they're behaving. And then also we're looking at individual stocks and attendee submissions. So our Wyckoff people will submit their stocks that they've marked up so that we can all study them together. So it's really a great Wyckoff time spent together.
And obviously we would like to invite all of you guys who are not signed up for that particular class right now, if you're listening this session on this day or during this weekend, you can still sign up for the promotion that we have, 3 sessions for $30. So go to our website, wyckoffanalytics.com, and sign up.
Wonderful. All right. Well, our first stock today is Concho Resources. And this is a very long-term chart going back to 2010. And so you can see here that there's really 2 areas that we could call potentially the first area is an reaccumulation area after a markup period in 2010. And then the second area is a larger area that could be a reaccumulation. So we see that after forming a buying climax peak in 2014, that it sets up, followed by an automatic reaction, it sets up a big range bound structure, and which goes on for a very long period of time. Now, one thought that comes to mind for a Wyckoфfian is that a very long accumulation structure means that we may have a very, very large point figure count, which could lead to a significant markup period and potential markup that could last a long period of time and go up quite a bit. So the most recent thing that's happened is that in 2018, now remember this is a very long-term chart, we saw a Concho jump up and out into an upthrust action, and now it's come back in, not retracing a whole lot of the move from the beginning of 2016. So that's actually looks very bullish to me, is the fact that it hasn't pulled back a lot and retraced much of its prior gain. And now it's attempting to respect that uptrend line with a good bullish bar, the most recent bar, and this data is as of the 12th. And so we are potentially looking at a pivot up into in an attempt to go up to the resistance area and then potentially jump out. So, Roman?
Yeah, I would definitely use for the analysis this latest structure, and specifically would look into this area. What is happening there. It's very interesting how the volume signature has increased. The last time we saw the increase in the volume signature was right here, but this is, very consistent, volume that comes here. So it's a little bit disturbing. The way how we could interpret this is the increase in the effort to push the price down, because there is a reaction or multiple reactions right here. And yet, as Bruce has mentioned, we're still resting on the upper part of that range. We have not violated any support lines here. So the result to the downside is somewhat decreasing. So it should be bullish, but we definitely would like to seek some confirmations of this bullish behavior. So we want to see that the price actually going to overcome 150, commit above this, short-term resistance, and prove to us that it can go above the buying climax high. Bruce?
That's a very important resistance line, because you can see the sheer magnitude of selling that came after that buying climax. And how it's respected that area. Even when it jumped out in 2018, it became very volatile and then ultimately did fail back into the trading area. And so we're a term used in the ancient era of Mr. Wyckoff himself was being on the hinge. And so this stock is really on the hinge here because it tries to make higher lows, and it's been doing that since the beginning of 2016. But also it needs to jump out above all this resistance that's overhead and get into an uptrend. So we're going to know soon, because if it fails back below that uptrending line that's just below, this hinge will, and this is the thing we don't know about a hinge, is which way it's going to turn. We have an idea that it has a bullish tone to it, but we're going to know very soon whether this is going to be bullish or bearish.
Mm-hmm. Bruce, by the way, before we go to the next chart, which is going to be HP, you mentioned something about the PNF, and I know that you and I in October we're going to have a special on the PNF. Do you want to say a couple of words on that?
Yeah, we sat down and started talking about all of the new ideas we have about how to teach the PNF concept with point and figure. And point and figure analysis is so unique, it's so special, it's so underutilized. Very few people in Wall Street use it. And we use the methodology that uses horizontal counting, which gives us the ability to estimate the potential for how much a stock can mark up or mark down. And it's really a remarkable tool. And we want to, in this particular three-part series that we're going to do in October, is we want to focus on point and figure application. And so we're going to do a tremendous number of case studies, which are going to focus on swing trading, focus on intraday trading, and we're going to show our attendees ways that they can use point and figure to augment their trading analysis and approach, and be able to really sharpen up their point and figure price objective skills.
Maybe for the next class, Bruce, and obviously, guys, you can go to wyckoffanalytics.com, find the October special, sign up. We will be glad, we'll be glad to see you there for the October special. But Bruce, for the next session, maybe for the power charting, we could do some PNF charts and just to show a little bit of what will be done in October.
Let's do that for sure. And plus, we love talking about point and figure. And it's so underutilized. So let's definitely do that.
All right.
Helmerich and Payne. This is an oil, another oil company, oil service. You can see here that this chart has been taken back to 2015, a really wonderful uptrend that we can see from 2012 up into the middle of 2014, which became a cyclic downturn, and since declining pretty sharply into a climax low in late 2014, early 2015, we can see that Helmerich and Payne has really set out to form what appears to be an accumulation structure. And so this is a very interesting, very long-term chart. What intrigues us is the fact this accumulation structure is so large. And here again, think point and figure. And so this could give us a tremendous count objective for higher prices. And the interesting part about HP is that it has, after an upthrust action at the end of 2016, it and got above the resistance area. It pretty much immediately failed back into the accumulation range. We're going to call it that. Hasn't resolved itself into an accumulation yet or into an uptrend. But it declined very sharply back down to the lower support area, but did not make a new low. And so this is a interesting area. A lot of supply was present at that time. That's the thing we're always looking for in accumulation structures, is how much supply is left. Well, what has subsequently happened, and I should let Ramon talk about this, is after that higher low, we had a turnoff of that and a rally that went right back up to the resistance area. Ramon, why don't you take it?
Yeah, we're rallying right into the resistance that was created, by phase A here, by the first initial move of the selling climax flow, and we're stopping there. So this is not necessarily exactly what we would like to see. We would like the price to continue going up, but
Yeah.
this is already a substantial rally. And it happens on the background where the whole volume signature for this trading range is going down. So we're thinking that supply is going down, supply is being observed. And we kind of see that on the first initial move down, there's a lot of supply increase. And then in phase B, still supply is present there. And that suggests the retesting at the same level. And as we go into the next reaction, even though it seems like it's a substantial reaction, but look at the levels of the supply. They're definitely going down. So that suggests some kind of absorption of the supply. And look at the next reaction. We are actually flat on the reaction for the first time. Every time we have a reaction is to the downside. And for the first time, we have that flatness. The only thing, Bruce, that bothers me here is this inability to overcome, the previous high right
Yeah.
here. And that we had, either a type of sprain or a sign of weakness here. So I would be looking tactically, for the same confirmation as with the previous stock, where we just want to see the price confirming that it has the ability to go up and to commit above.
And if it is able to do that and clear this whole area, now we can go back and take a final point figure count and estimate, do segments and estimate how much potential is in a rally in a new uptrend or a new markup. Okay, we've got to keep going. We got a lot more to do. So Ramon, why don't you take Boeing?
Boeing is a very interesting stock. I'm really interested in looking what's going to happen next. We kind of has had in this particular stock a very substantial leadership uptrend that has brought us to this area of around 350. We had a climactic run, and then we had a small distribution area which defined the change of character reaction. And this change of character had both the supply behind it and the ease of movement to the downside. So that defined the whole range. And look how nicely the price just goes around the mean and this trading range. And majority of the price is between the resistance and the support lines. So a very good Wyckoff tool right at the beginning of the range for us to use to define the trading range. After the buying climax automatic reaction, we have an upthrust, which is a secondary test. It tests the previous high. And then multiple tests at the lows in phase B, and then a much more substantial upthrust where the price spends actually more time above the initial upthrust on the secondary test. That's a sign of strength for us because it tells us that there is no selling that comes right away as the price reaches above the resistance. It's only later on some selling comes, probably on some news, and it's somewhat limited. There are just few days on the way down. There is not a lot of selling, and we're making a higher low. And then we're going into
right near support.
Yeah, and then we're going into the apex formation where higher lows and lower highs define kind of like a triangular hinge or apex formation. And we see in this area right here that the volume is going down, which is really good. This means that supply is diminishing. We see from the price action that volatility to the downside also diminishing. And every time the price tried to go down, it actually creates a higher low, which is a bullish indication. Bruce?
It's on the hinge. I love the last two bars, which this is daily, but the volume's expanding. It's turning up. It's trying to clear the triangle area. And so now it'll be interesting to see if we have a change of character where Boeing could just march up and out of this area and start a new uptrend. And of course, Boeing is an important leadership stock, Dow stock. And if it can lead the way here, which, I mean, it's got to overcome a lot of resistance, so it's not remotely out of the woods. And but if it can do that, and these last 2 days are encouraging, Boeing could set a tone for the entire market for the fourth quarter. So.
And we were discussing this yesterday, you know, in WMD session, Wyckoff market discussion. You know, we were talking about how Boeing was such a leadership going into the trade talks with everyone around the world, and then the trading range started exactly on that note, and it seems that maybe the talks are close to the conclusion, and maybe Boeing is showing us something of what's going to happen. And these are the typical discussions that Bruce and I would have during the Wyckoff market discussions. So if you can join us, you know, if it's going to be helpful, definitely join us.
And we have a special for the next couple of weeks, so go check it out. Okay, so now we're going into the scooter ranks that are weakening. And so we're going to have to move a little faster going through these three stocks. This is the Nasdaq NDAQ, and you can see here that after a good uptrend into June, where it's been leadership, this has really been leadership throughout 2018, much stronger than the market, that it had a somewhat of a decline, not a sharp, sudden decline, but it did have its most important reaction down to the bottom of the trading range, which sets up support, and now it's been oscillating between resistance and support. Now, one thing that we are seeing is higher lows, and so but the most recent decline is interesting in that it's going down longer. The volume on the down bars are greater, and so there appears to continue to be important supply. So it will be very interesting to see, especially after this most recent down bar, which is a pretty strong down bar, is whether or not we get follow through down to the support area. And what we would be concerned about, especially with the scooter rank dropping as much as it has, is that if it gets down to support, breaks support, and then cannot get back above it. And we would call that sort of an element of ice. And so we're very concerned. It's just a charting concept. The Wyckoff era was popular, but right now this weakness seems to suggest that it could get down to the support area pretty easily.
So it looks to me, Bruce, as kind of like a rotational pattern here. We've talked a lot about technology being rotated out, and we see how, you know, supply comes in, it increases, finally has some kind of, you know, push to the downside, does not necessarily overcome the previous flow, which still suggests that, you know, some demand is still there. And then as it goes into the upthrust, then there is more of the ease of movement where you know, there is less of the volume signature, but yet the price moves down. So I agree with Bruce that we probably, you know, kind of like have this being drawn to the support area. Having said this, look at the relative strength and look at the price. So usually we would be looking for the confirmation of the signal, and you can read about this in the chart school about this technique, is where we're trying to define the areas of support, and we're trying to see the confirmation of the break to the downside in the relative strength and the break in price. And it still did not happen. So that's the only thing that concerns me. And in this type of the situation, so I think that, you know, we could have some kind of increased volatility and then another rally, and then everything's going to line up either to the downside or to the upside. The same with the scooters. You can use the same technique, and you could look for the lows in the price and then try to figure out whether the break, let's say on the scooter, comes on the break in the price as well, and it doesn't. So again, that kind of brings me, Bruce, to the idea that maybe this is just a rotational pattern, and we could see just much short-term weakness, and then we'll have to figure out what's going to happen next.
Yeah, could be just a trading range for the foreseeable future. So, okay, NVIDIA. And Ramon, why don't you lead with this? This is one that you're really have done a lot of good work on.
Also, a leadership stock of the last cycle. So the change of character here after the buying climax and preliminary supply is not that great in terms of the distance that is traveled to the downside. And but it does has all of the characteristics of the change of character with the increasing volume signature, with the increasing spread, some aggressiveness to the downside. Next is the secondary test. We are still trying to overcome the buying climax high. This concludes phase A for us, the stop in action of the whole uptrend that we have had. A bunch of tests in the next segment, which is phase B for us, Wyckofians. So it tests at the lows and then tests at the highs of the same phase. And I wonder if this right here at around 240, 250 is an area of multiple tests where we might be thinking if this is a reaccumulation, then this could be a potential phase C. And we had an attempt to overcome the upslope in the resistance. We did not do this, and we fell back into the range. But on the horizontal level, we're still resting right on that support that was a previous resistance. And we actually have a support cluster here between 270 and 250. So that gives us a little bit of a room where we could potentially just rest here. So Bruce, I would say that anything in the recent price action would be very telling. Either the price is going to fall and that we would consider this, again, being in the same group of semiconductors, just a seasonal rotation, or if the price holds here, then we probably could have a continuation.
The only thing I'll say here is I just did my most recent blog was on semiconductors and another semiconductor leadership stock. NVIDIA has been important leadership and the semiconductors have been weakening. So if NVIDIA can, find good support here and then turn back up, it will, I think, help the whole group. So I'll leave it at that. And we have time for one more. So analog devices. Here we have a important consolidation that resolved itself by jumping up and out in late May, and then instead of being able to consolidate and continue its uptrend, it's found that there's significant supply that's pushed it right back down into the prior peak, which was the January peak. And so now we've given up ground back below important old resistance, which should be new support. And so now being in a downtrend and below that trend line, I think really says that this is a stock that has a lot of weakness in it. Look at the volume coming in at the end. Ramon, any last thoughts on this one before?
Yes, absolutely. So look at the relative strength against the Vanguard total market, and we're definitely in the downtrend, lower highs, lower lows. And then look at the scooters as well. And this is where we actually have that confirmation of price going down on the breakdown, and then price and scooters confirming that breakdown as well as on the relative strength. Bruce?
Well, Ramon, we are just about done. And we want to thank everybody for joining us. And we will see you again next week on Power Charting.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.